talking about the Hajj. So the basic outline, just going to talk a bit about basics of Islam. Don't want to take anything for granted. We may have people here who don't know much about Islam. So for those who are well versed in what Islam is and Hajj is, apologies, or sorry but not sorry. Talk a bit about the importance of Hajj, some of the rituals, and from a sort of spiritual and a physical point of view, how we can prepare, or pilgrims prepare for Hajj, and the advice that we tend to give for people when they're going on Hajj, what to do out there and what to do when they come back. And then some pictures of my Hajj journey, which was back in 2017, pre-COVID, but just sort of outlining or demystifying some of the steps for people who've not had the fortune or ability to go to Hajj or Umrah, and then we'll talk a bit about the public health aspects of the Hajj or mass gatherings. So so the Hajj, most people know what the Hajj is. It's an annual pilgrimage. It's the largest annual pilgrimage in the world. It's not the largest pilgrimage per se, but it's the largest one that happens every year. So you can get up to 2.5 million people going every year over a very short period of time, a week or 10 days. They tend to be in a very confined space. So that's the Kabah, or sort of what we consider the house of God, the first house that was built on earth in commemoration of, for the worship of God, and it was built originally by Abraham, or Ibrahim as we refer to him. And a lot of the rituals around the Hajj date back to things from the time of Abraham or Ibrahim. So the 6 articles of Islamic faith, or what it is to be a Muslim, these are aspects of belief, is to believe in one God, to believe that angels exist, and obviously angels can then carry the messages from God to prophets. We believe in the holy book, so obviously the Quran as our holy book, but we acknowledge that over time God has sent many scriptures to different nations and peoples, including the Torah to Moses, the Injil, or what's translated as the Gospel, to Isa or Jesus, the Zabur or the Psalms to David, and so these scriptures were sent obviously in their pure form, but we believe as Muslims only the Quran remains in its pure uncorrupted form, whereas others have had modifications over time. One other belief that we have is belief in all the prophets. So we believe that God, since the creation of man, has sent about 124,000 prophets to guide different peoples over different ages, and we believe as part of that Muhammad was sent as the final messenger, peace be upon him. Belief in the day of judgment or day of reckoning is another core aspect, and obviously to go with that, the belief in heaven and hell, and another concept which sometimes is difficult for people to understand, but it's around belief in God's divine will and destiny. In Arabic it's called al-qada wal-qadar. So these are the things which define a Muslim, aspects of their belief, and to manifest your belief you need to do that through certain actions, and there are 5 key actions known as the 5 pillars of Islam, and that is to say that you sincerely believe in the one true God, and that Muhammad is the last messenger. By saying that, that's a profession of faith. To pray 5 times a day, to give alms or charity, 2.5% of your unspent annual wealth to the poor and needy, to fast during Ramadan, which we've sort of just come through, and that's where obviously not even water comes in, and then there's the Hajj, or the pilgrimage to Mecca, which is at least once in a lifetime, contingent on your ability to sort of self-finance. If you can't, if you're too poor, then obviously that obligation is lifted from you. But for most other people, they should make a sincere intention to go at least once in their life. So the Hajj, as we've seen, is the fifth pillar of Islam. It dates back to the time of Abraham, and a lot of the rituals relate to that, which will come on in the next slide or two. It occurs in the last month of the Islamic calendar, and again, as many people will know, the Muslim calendar tends to be about 10-11 days shorter than the Gregorian calendar. Hence, Ramadan and Hajj, they move forward every year by about 10 days, and sort of repeats over a 33-year cycle. So this year, sort of Eid will be on the sort of about the 29th of June, dependent on moon sighting, and obviously pilgrims will be going out a week or two prior to that, and pilgrims tend to stay for a few days after that, and that's part of the rituals. In 2000, there are 1.7 million people going there, gradually increasing to 2019 pre-COVID, when it got to 2.5 million, and that's a mixture, sort of 60% international travellers and about 40% local to the Arabian Peninsula. In 2020, there were only 1,000 people that went for obviously COVID restrictions, and then similarly in 2021, just over 50k, and they were all locals. And then they opened it up again last year, and then a lot more people are coming this year. That's the plan. And just the nature of Mecca and Medina, there tend to be activities 24/7 all year round, with all the pilgrims that are going there, and obviously more so during the Hajj season. So some of the duties and rites around Hajj, well, it can be very physically demanding. There's a lot of walking involved, and obviously in the heat in Arabia. Two main sort of zones or sites. There's people will be in Mecca, where they go to the Kabah, that over there where they do the circumambulation. They walk around it 7 times in an anti-clockwise direction, reciting chants and prayers, etc. And then also they are encouraged to run between 2 mountain peaks, Safa and Marwah, and again that commemorates the journey of Abraham's wife Hajar, who was abandoned in Mecca by Abraham, as she saw. So she'd just given birth to Ismail, the firstborn of Abraham, and then Abraham took them to this sort of desert place. There's nothing there at the time, and he left them and made a prayer to God. She panicked, and then she ran out of food, she ran out of water. She was running up and down these 2 little hills looking for help and support. So she ran sort of in between them 7 times, and that's something that the pilgrims also do. They go up and down these little 2 points 7 times. And then she turned around and saw the baby, and he was grinding his heels into the ground, and then water was gushing from where his feet were in the ground, and that's the spring of Zamzam water. And actually the name Zamzam comes from when she panicked seeing this water in the desert, and she sort of dammed it up by blocking it off with sand, and she was telling the water to stop, and that is Zamzam. And then that's where we get the Zamzam spring from. So a lot of the rituals again commemorate that, and drinking the Zamzam water is an important part of the rituals there. The other place we tend to go to is Mina, or the tent city. And it is literally a tent city, and I'll explain why it looks like that. But these are essentially they're sort of prefab tents. They're constructed tents, they're air-conditioned tents, and they're sort of millions and millions of them that accommodate. Well, I mean, there are hundreds and thousands of these built permanent tents where the pilgrims stay, and we'll talk about that later on. But there may not be transport, so people may need to walk between these different places, and that's a lot of walking. People stay in these tents. The tents are big. You can have up to 40 people in a group in each tent. As I say, they're often air conditioned, or there are facilities there, washing facilities, eating facilities, etc. So that they are catered for. There was a fire some years ago, which is why they sort of reverted to this type of more regulated tent structures. People will also spend a day in a place called Arafat, and that is essentially the ninth day of Dhul Hijjah. That is the most important day of the whole rituals, and it's a day from sort of noontime until the sunset, where we're encouraged to pray and ask forgiveness, and pray and ask for forgiveness constantly. And that is the whole essence of the Hajj, is to ask sincerely for forgiveness. And if you do, God may wash away all your sins, and you can start afresh. And so that's why it's the most important part of the rituals. Then people stay overnight in a particular place called Muzdalifah. They collect pebbles, and then there's some symbolic stoning of some pillars which represent the devils, which is when it said that for 3 times when God asked Abraham to sacrifice his firstborn son, sacrifice his firstborn, he was, the devil tried to sort of tempt him away from that. And the commemoration is that we throw stones at these pillars to represent when Abraham was chasing away these doubts. Wearing the ihram, the 2 plain white garments, is compulsory for men. Simple sandals. We can't wear caps or anything like that. Glasses are fine, obviously. So when you don that, and you have to put it on before you get into a certain territorial area. Second. Then that's when you sort of declare that you're in a state of ritual pilgrimage. 1 second. Sorry, my fridge is packed up, so we've got somebody coming to look at the fridge. So hey, on days like this. So when you put on this the thing that the men folk, they're in a state of ritual purity. Women can essentially wear what they like, and they tend to wear the black covering, the abaya. Where are we? Oh yeah. Another key aspect is offering sacrifice. So when Abraham went through with the sacrifice, it was found that basically he'd sacrificed a goat or a ram instead, and again, to commemorate that, we also sacrifice an animal and offer that as commemoration of that act of ultimate sacrifice. And for the men, we have to shave all our hair, and the ladies, they just need to snip a bit of their hair at the end. And to sort of complete the rituals, you go back to Mecca and you walk around the Kabah and do the Tawaaf, circumambulate, and do the Sai'ee, and do some more prayers. So that's essentially the major rituals that are involved in the Hajj. And like I said, it commemorates a lot of the actions of Abraham and his son Ismail and his wife Hajar, the Kabah was originally built by Abraham and his son Ismail, and it was actually originally built in a rectangular fashion, but later on it was shortened because they didn't have the finances to build it to the original size. And then there's a famous sort of black stone that's in one of the corners, which again, it's not part of the rituals, but a lot of people like to touch it as they go around, or at least try and touch it once or kiss it. There's often a lot of crushing around that area, which is near the doors to the Kabah. And yeah, and there's a specific chant that we need to say as we're going around or going for the Hajj, and again that just commemorates what Abraham said when he was going on his first pilgrimages. And it said that a lot of the other prophets, Moses and others, also went to Mecca to do the Hajj as well. Yep, and there's a thing here called Abraham Station, Maqam Ibrahim, which is said to have the footprints of Abraham in that sort of gilded cage there. And one of the last rituals you do is when you've done your 7 times going around the Kabah, you pray 2 units of prayer sort of behind that place facing the Kabah, obviously. Hajj has a lot of significance for individuals. One of the 5 pillars, obviously, it's a must do. It can represent starting life anew, where you have your old sins forgiven completely, and then you make a commitment to God to be a better person. And people use that as a start of a transformation, beginning of a new journey, a new self, to anchor some personal growth, to get a better connection with God and themselves through those experiences. It's not always transformative. You don't get a road to Damascus experience. If people go with that intention, it doesn't happen. It's more incremental, and the better you prepare for it, the more you get out of it. One of the ways that I sort of looked at it for me was I saw the Hajj as an intervention in my life course. So if I was the same person in all aspects before going to the Hajj as after coming back from the Hajj a few months afterwards, then that would imply that the Hajj has not really had any impact on me in my outlook, in my heart, in my relationships. So what was the point? So for me, it was a conscious thing to try to be different and to build on things that I'd learned, because then I could look back and say, well, I have the Hajj has impacted on me, and I am different now. I feel different, and I act different, and I see things differently. But not everyone does that. People go for whatever reasons they have. So it's obligatory that everyone should be going, but it's also obligatory that if you do go, you need to prepare well and to take necessary preventative measures, and it's obligatory to maintain good health. And again, if you go on the Saudi website, they clearly say that, look, you shouldn't be coming here if you've got terminal illness, if you're very unwell, if you're very vulnerable, and that's not the point. The point is that you should try and go when you can afford it and when you're in good health. That maximizes your experience. So some health principles related to to Islam, actually. Maintaining good health is a duty for all Muslims. We see that our body is a trust and amana from God, and we have an obligation to look after it and not to abuse it. And again, that's an important message that we should try to reinforce. Sadly, we don't do it as a community, but it's there as something that underpins our sort of philosophy of who we are and our relationship with God. Another very famous saying of our Prophet, peace be upon him, is that cleanliness is half of one's faith. And again, we use that a lot. Reinforce that during the times of COVID. Just the importance of hand washing as an expression of that. And again, we wash ourselves, ritually purify ourselves at least 5 times a day before our 5 times prayers. And again, it embodies that sense of cleanliness. Concepts of quarantine and preventative measures is again that's sort of core to our understanding of health issues, and very famous issues incident when the second Caliph Umar was going on a trip, and there was a plague in an area, and he was quite explicit that those people need to quarantine themselves to prevent the spread of infection. And so this concept of forbearance is quite ingrained in the way we see things. Another famous saying of the Prophet is that for every disease there is a cure except old age, and so we should seek that cure. And another important thing that I often reinforce to pilgrims is a day lost in ill health is a day lost in worship. So if we don't prepare well enough, if you get ill when you're out there, then you're missing out on all the power-ups that you can get. You know, praying in Mecca near the Kabah, that is is equivalent to 100,000 extra prayers somewhere else. Praying in the Prophet's mosque, you know, one prayer gives you an extra 1,000 compared to praying at home. So, you know, it's important to have good health so you can maximize on those opportunities. And again, ill health, if people get ill, you know, then it not only affects them, it affects the people they're traveling with and the groups and other people around them in terms of anxiety or other people getting unwell. So again, it's critical to be healthy and prepare well. So things that we do in terms of preparation for Hajj, as I said, there's a lot of walking, so people should be, you know, starting 6 to 8 weeks before going on Hajj by, you know, gently, you know, doing lots of walking exercises and buying some good quality sandals that they can break in. There's no point in getting a new pair of sandals that you only put on for the first time when you're out there, and then you end up with blisters and it starts to cut you, etc. So you need to break in good quality sandals, good health, sensible eating habits, and again, just a reminder, you know, and we've gone through Ramadan, is that you don't engorge yourself on food. You should fill your stomach 1/3 with food, 1/3 with drink, and leave 1/3 for air. Other important things is, if we're going for Hajj, or people we're knowing, is, you know, if you've got chronic illnesses or any medical conditions, seek advice from the GP or your practice nurse in advance. If they don't know what Hajj is, inform them about Hajj and what it entails. For ladies, obviously, it's important to speak to their GPs and to think about having tablets which can sort of stop their menses for a period of time. So it means that they can, you know, do all the rituals at the right and appropriate time. Take a list of medications. If you're on medications, take an extra prescription as well. If you're on specialist care with a hospital, take their contact details with a cover letter of your condition. Extra medication, make sure you take it in your hand. It's not in your luggage, so it doesn't get lost. So simple travel advice that we give. Just need to reinforce that as general travel advice. Other things, obviously, to be vaccinated. So there's it's compulsory to have the meningococcal vaccine and the COVID vaccines. The visas were not given unless they were there. Strongly advised for, you know, flu and other vaccines accordingly. Poor oral health can really be very bad for people. So again, seeing a dentist beforehand. If people are struggling with mobility, as I say, take sandals, walking sticks, and folding chairs are available out there. And other essential things, there's a list there, I won't go through them, but basic, you know, painkillers, you know, sun cream, moisturizer, unscented, you know, sanitizers, plasters and bandages, water sterilization tablets for oral rehydration therapy. These are really important. Throat lozenges. A lot of people come back with a Hajj cough, so having something like that is again really supportive. So when people are going out there, it's a recognition. It's hot. I mean, it's hot here in the UK at the moment, but it's even hotter out there. And you get extremes of temperature, very dry heat. It can be quite humid as well. And some of the men will, you know, in terms of wearing the ritual clothing, they'll have exposed parts of their body. Not allowed to wear caps or headgear. We can take umbrellas, but and obviously sweating a lot. So just recognition of that. A lot of walking. And people are focused on walking and not necessarily, you know, hydration, and so it's taking care of their sort of salt and water intake. Sensible things that we give as general travel advice: avoid the hottest parts of the day, stay under shade when possible. If you can travel at night, take an umbrella, preferably one that reflects the heat. drink plenty of water and carry extra water, and or an extra bottle that you can sort of fill up. Avoid open top buses when you're traveling between places. Frequently wash your hands and face, and we do that with our ritual ablutions, but make a habit of it. And again, taking electrolytes or salt intake. Other things, obviously, general respiratory hygiene: catch it, bin it, kill it. You know, we've all come through the pandemic, and just reinforcing these messages: hand washing and disposal of tissues, and really critical, these things in preventing the spread of infections. A lot of people come back with the Hajj cough. A lot of people are in close proximity to each other, so you're exposed to other people coughing all over you. So I would encourage people to wear face masks. Infections can spread quite easily. If you can see someone who is ill, then obviously, you know, keep your distance from them. If people have pre-existing conditions, again, it's important to see their doctors and know how to recognize if they've got issues with their asthma, their diabetes, or heart problems. So all of these things are important in that. Other things, again, this is just basic travel advice. You know, lots of walking. Vaseline can sometimes help with the chafing. Soothing creams. Adequate rest, elevating your feet. You know, and we talked about good footwear. We'll come on to head shaving now. It's all quite regulated, but there used to be a higher risk of bloodborne viruses if people were sharing razors when they're shaving their heads. So, you know, as I say, most authorized barbers are fully registered by the Saudi authorities, and they will, you know, take a new blade out every time. But again, it's just making sure that, you know, you're not that you're looking out for those things. And for ladies, carrying their own scissors for cutting their own hair. The important thing, it doesn't sort of just stop when you come back. It's important to look after people's health when they come back from a trip like this. They can be quite exhausted. I recommend people have a rest period where they just chill out for a couple of days when they come back. It's, you know, we shouldn't try to book it that we come back on a Tuesday night and we're back to work on sort of the Wednesday morning. You know, you need a couple of days to decompress, get some good quality sleep, have visiting times for relatives. So you can say to people, come between such and such a time, rather than sort of come at any time you like. And again, just resume the normal medication once people are back. So any questions on that before I go on to sort of some of the pictures of some of the rituals? There's a lot of information there, I know.
That was really informative, Naveed. There's so many new things that I was learning in that as well. And lots of reflections on the Hajj. I mean, I remember taking the oral rehydration packs with me because of the risk of, and loperamide was definitely up on that list. So, but it'd be quite interesting. A few sort of things that came to mind just on that part was around if you are taking medications, do you know of any particular medications which might be banned or not allowed in Saudi?
Yeah, I mean the control drugs. So, you know, your sort of morphines and things like that. The Saudis are obviously very strict on that. So yeah, you know, it's having explicit letters and prescriptions from your sort of consultants around that. And again, if they can downgrade those very potent painkillers to others that may work, then again, that's a conversation that you need to have. But yeah, the Saudi authorities are very strict on your morphine-based painkillers, but most other things they're okay about. But again, it's just, you know, I would advise taking an extra week or two of medications for necessary medications, or, you know, just in case. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So moving on to sort of the actual sort of rites of Hajj. Most of these are my own picks from a few years ago. Things have changed since then. So we put on the ihram, or the sort of the two white cloths for men. Ladies have their own rules. Again, they don't need to put on the two white garments. And then you make your intention whilst you're outside of the holy sort of precinct of Mecca, what type of Hajj you want to do, and the three types of Hajj, but the most common is Hajj Tamattu, where you combine Umrah and Hajj together. And if you're coming from Medina, then your sort of ihram point is Dhul Hulayfa. They've built a little mosque there. That's where the pilgrims go and they put on their ihram, and then they're in the ritual state of pilgrimage. And then the rules of pilgrimage apply. You can't sort of cut your nails, kill animals, and have intimate relations with your spouse and things like that. So you're in that sacred zone, as it were. People then travel to Mina, and the package I was with, we spent a day or two in a little hotel where we then were able to go for Umrah, go back to the hotel, and then the actual ritual starts, where you need to stay in the tent in Mina. So you go to your tent area in Mina, do your prayers, etc. Wake up on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah in the morning, early morning, and you go to Arafat. I managed to go by a sort of a train, or you can go by bus and coach, or even walk, but it takes a long time. You need to be in Arafat before midday. And then from the point of noon till the point of sunset, you're in Arafat. You don't need to go onto that big plain, where the little mount is, or go to the mosque there. You just need to be anywhere on there. And sort of my tented area was sort of on the outskirts, and it is a big tent. So you can go to the plain, and be under direct sunlight, or you can be in your tent where you've got food, air conditioning, toilet facilities, washing facilities available. And what that means is that you're able then to focus on prayer. You're not worried about rehydration so much, not worried about sort of passing out, etc., or the crowds. You're in your zone, and you go with the hundreds of prayers that you should have. I downloaded them on my phone, but also had hard copies that I would read, just to conserve battery life, really. And then when I was there, people are actually within an hour or two, people coming up to me and saying, "Can I borrow some of your prayers?" because they'd run out of theirs. So, but just be really mindful that you're going to be there for a number of hours, and this is your chance to one-on-one to ask God for forgiveness, and or other things you want to ask God for. So that's the day of Arafat. Then after sunset prayer, or after sunset, people go to Muzdalifah. They pick up sort of little stones and pebbles there. They stay open night in that area on the ground. And then the next morning they go to do the first ritual stoning of the one of the pillars, the big Jamarat it's called. Then you do the animal sacrifice, but again, if you're going with a group, it's all orchestrated, so you've already paid for it beforehand. And as soon as you get notification that your animal has been sacrificed in your name, then the menfolk can go and have their head shaved, which marks the end of the ritual period, and they've sort of completed their main Hajj elements. And then people will spend the next sort of few nights in Mina, and then you return to the Kabah for your final, for your Tawaaf-ul Ifada, and you do the running between Safa and Marwah, and then that sort of completes the rites of Hajj. Once you've done those things, and possibly even then go back, if you can get there, to to Maqam Ibrahim. And then, so after the days of Tashriq are over, you can come out of your ihram, and the next 2 or 3 days you can stone the jamarat, and that's where you collect the pebbles, the 3 jamarat, the small, medium, and the big one, then finally you do your final tawaf, the circumambulation. That's called Tawaaf-ul, the farewell tawaf, and that marks the end of the whole Hajj, and that should be the last you should be in Makkah, and then you leave once you've done that and return on your onward journey. So this was me and the missus. This was we did ours from Medina. And this is where we went to Dhul Hulayfa, and as you see, we can put on our ihram and made our intention there. That's the Dhul Hulayfa, the mosque there. And then back in those days, there are different ways of getting there. We were on a coach, and you drive many hours from Medina to Mecca, and this was one of the rest spots that we had on the journey. And now, so this was our coach. Obviously, the coaches were with our group, men one coach, ladies on another coach. But now again, some people will go by the high speed connection as well, which is there. This is sort of just the lobby here of one of the hotels we stayed before we went to the tents. Here again, just milling around the Kabah. This is the tent city, so you can see that these are all purpose-built tents, and there's literally tens of thousands of them, and they're in different zones, so you need to know which is your zone, and the zones are normally geographically by sort of continent and country, and so it's just important to make a note of how you get to and from your tent. What a lot of people can now do is just basically drop a pin on your phone, your location pin, so you know how to get back to where you need to be. This is what our tent looked like inside. Lots of people. The ladies' tent was next door, but again, this was our tent with all our sort of facilities, so you can sit and sleep on these couches. You've got your sleeping bags there, but it was air conditioned, and it wasn't unpleasant to be there. This is getting up in the morning time to go to Arafat, waiting for our little train to get there. Oops. This isn't my picture. This is just taken off the internet, but this is the plain of Arafat, and this is what a lot of people imagine Arafat to be. And when they go there, a lot of people do spend a lot of their time there. I chose to stay in my tent. This is our tent, and it was just a much more pleasant environment for me to be able to focus on my prayers with God. But again, you can go out, and it is very busy going out there, and it's best to stay with your group, because there are literally millions of people there. And then after sunset, you go to Muzdalifah, and again, it's just an open air car park or whatever, just an open air ground, and just sort of you pray there, and you sleep on the floor, and then you get up in the morning and you go back to do the ritual stoning. And obviously everyone is going back at that time, so it's you need to choose a time where it's less busy. There's going to be lots of crowds. You just got to be very patient around getting from Muzdalifah to the Jamarat to stone, the ritual stoning. That's what that's what it looks like now. In the olden days, it was just a very small pillar, but they've sort of made it much longer now. So they've allowed pilgrims to sort of come on either side, and there's a flow around it. So there's much more chance of throwing your pebbles. And then once you've done that, you get told that your animal's been sacrificed. You go find the barbers. Again, as I say, they're in sort of registered areas where you go find your barbers, and you come back looking like Telly Savalas, and then just going back to the Kabah, doing the final rituals. This is sort of the two columns you have between sort of Safa and Marwah, where you're sort of running in between. There's a green light here which commemorates the dip between the two mountains, and that's, you're supposed to sort of jog a little faster as you're going through that area, and you go up one side and then you turn around and you go down the other side, and again it's, you know, the flow is managed around that. That's the door of the Kaaba, and you've got the Maqam Ibrahim, where the footprints of Ibrahim are said to be. And again, you can see how busy it can be. It's a slightly long exposure, but you can see where the flow is, and a lot of people, they stay around this area. This is where the door is, and here is where the black stone is, and they like to, you know, kiss it, touch it, or, you know, but it's not necessary as a necessary ritual. And again, once people stone the devils, they need to make prayer or supplications, and this is what we're doing. And then you're going back, and you can see here there's a very sort of there's misty areas here where the authorities, that they spray, you know, cool mist just to cool the pilgrims down on their journeys, going back to the tent city. And again, this is one of the final Tawaafs. You can see that people are zoned by the different tour groups of the different countries. You've got a good cohort of Indonesian pilgrims here. You can see other, you know, color-coded pilgrims. It just allows them to stay together. Not necessary, but that's how it works there. Some other bits, you know, that aren't strictly part of the Hajj, but there's this team area which used to be inside the Kaaba when Abraham built it, but when they rebuilt it, they didn't have the funds to build it the full length, so they just made a semicircular area just to commemorate that's the original size of the Kaaba. And if you get to pray in this area, then that's like praying inside the Kaaba. A lot of people, as I say, want to touch the door. That's the black stone, and there's some myths and legends around that. And you can see people here, you know, scrambling. That's where you get a lot of crushing. People wanting to get to that area. So people, it's not although it's not part of the rituals of Hajj, a lot of people would like to go to Medina, because that's obviously where the Prophet is buried, and has a lot of significance for Muslims, and that's the Prophet's mosque. And so people will fit in a visit either before Hajj or after Hajj, or both, to go to Medina. That's the Prophet's mosque in Medina, where you can sort of pray. They're the tombs of the Prophet and his best mates, Abu Bakr and Umar, the first two caliphs. And again, part of the rituals is giving our salam to the Prophet, giving, you know, salutations and peace on him. And there's a special area next to his grave, which is known as the Roda, and that has a special significance if you can get to pray there, because it's like, you know, it's equivalent to praying in the gardens of paradise. So people try to try and get a few minutes there. Other things people do, they can go to the Jannat al-Baqi, which is the graveyard where a lot of the prominent early Muslims were buried, and that's adjacent to the mosque. You can go visit the first mosque that was built by the Prophet. This is Masjid al-Quba, or you can go visit some of the battleground sites. This is the Battle of Uhud and the little mount where the archers were. So that's essentially sort of some of the other aspects. Moving finally onto the public health aspects of the Hajj, but before that, any other questions from friends or colleagues?
There is a question from Fatiha in the chat around the number of pilgrims. So she said the quota of Hajj places allocated to UK for this year's pilgrimage is set to be reduced to about 3,600, compared with to more than 25,000 before the COVID-19 pandemic. Did you know anything about that?
Yeah, they're just slowly increasing the numbers. You know, so last year I think they had under 1 million people, so they just want to, you know, slowly get back up to the way. I think at our peak we used to send I think 50k to Saudi for the Hajj before COVID, but it's just a government, the Saudi government's restrictions. They just want to manage things slightly, you know, better. I mean, it's a shame, really. They've put on restrictions there. If you've been within the last 5 years, you can't reapply, which I think is sensible. So.
Yep.
So yeah.
I think that really hits it, and it is. And you're looking at those pictures, it just reinforces the logistical challenge of having that many people crammed into those. You know, it's a finite space.
It's a very small space, yeah.
You know, and I think that there is an element of that. And how do they get that balance right across all the countries and all the pilgrims from around the world?
Yeah. No, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And again, sort of moving on to the public health aspects of it. Again, a lot of those things that you just mentioned are around mass gatherings. You know, so we've talked, you know, the potential for rapid spread of infectious diseases, outbreaks, foodborne illnesses. I mean, there's bound to be, you know, lots of gastroenteritis out there with the amount of food that's being prepared and distributed. It's not well documented. I think the authorities keep a wraps on that. Obviously, lots of health-related issues which we talked about, crowd management, which I'll come on to, and emergency planning. And again, if you're getting all these people from different parts of the world, communicating with them can provide its own challenges. So some of the incidents that people may be aware of. Obviously, there was the Grand Mosque seizure in 1979. Didn't end well, but the stampedes that people are aware of, the tunnel disaster in 1990, Mina 1994, and the collapse in the Jamarat Bridge in 2006. Again, a lot of these things to do with the stampedes. There was a fire in the tent city, sort of 97 again, which meant that they revamped the way that the tents were done. The crane collapse that we talked about right at the beginning, there's a lot of cranes there, and so you know, making sure that, you know, those things are safe. Road traffic accidents were in the past very common, and we've had a meningitis outbreak in 1987 and 2000. We had the W135, and again, that's why we get the compulsory quadrivalent vaccines. So the mitigation, in terms of better crowd management, what they've done is better wider walkways, pedestrian walkways. You've seen that, constructing bridges, and the stoning of the pilgrims. The stoning of the devils. You've got on 3 levels: the ground first and second level. You've got elevators. It's a one-way system. There are crowd marshals there, so it is far better regulated. Obviously, there's security cameras looking at crowd control and identifying hazards early. We've just talked about limiting the number of people, so it's not a free-for-all, so things are manageable. And again, through COVID, we got the use of apps for access to the holy site. So certainly during and after COVID, to go to the Kabah, I'm not sure about Hajj, but in Umrah time, to go to the Kabah, to go to the Prophet's Mosque, to go to the Roda, you needed to book online and show that to the guards to gain access. Better safety infrastructure, so more health centres for medical care, requirements that, you know, groups should have their own medics go with them, more ambulances and emergency responders, fire safety systems within the tents and other buildings, regular inspections, the use of apps I've talked about. Other things like the mechanized umbrellas that you see in Medina, cooling mists, fans, air-conditioned tents, all of these things, help create a better environment for the pilgrims. And there is ample supply. You're always very close to getting Zamzam water, both cool and also sort of tepid temperature, and the recent constructions of high-speed rail and other road and rail infrastructures helped mitigate some of these infrastructure issues. And part of this, what I'm doing today, is in line with the requirements of better education and guidance for pilgrims. So training for people going out there. That's why I go to the local mosques and give a similar type of presentation, and better use of social media and people using apps for these things as well in terms of better information. And crisis management, again, better emergency response teams all over the areas. They do lots of exercise planning, and obviously they have this thing every year, so they can tweak things and improve things year on year in terms of their coordination and their response and how to do things well. So, any questions? I'll finish there. Sorry, there's a lot of information today.
There was a lot. It was amazing. There was a lot of information, but it was really informative, and I think the pictures really gave that journey. It took me back down memory lane, to be honest. We've got a question. We've got a couple of questions. Hands up now. I think it's. I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, so please do forgive me. Mebul?
Yeah, it's Mebul. Hiya. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Naveed, for the informative presentation. I was just going to ask, in terms of transport, what's like the best way to sort of go about getting to, like the Kabah area from, let's say you touched down in Saudi on the airport, and then from that point to the Hajj, what's the best way to go about with transport?
If you're organising it yourself, I mean, you can book the high-speed rail. I would say that's probably the best way to do it. But or you can get taxis, or you can share taxis. Other people will be there, or coaches, because traveling, there'll be a lot of people traveling there at the same time, so that shouldn't be an issue. In the past, obviously, when we were allowed to go from the UK, you'd had to go with a travel group. They would organise all of that for you. But again, there's lots of taxis there anyway, so it's not a problem. Just make sure you tell them to put the meter on. It's a fixed rate.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on that only because my brother's going this year, inshallah. A lot of these things are now quite regulated in terms of the Hajj. The whole package is pretty much put together for you, and you have to do it through the Nusuk app. So just to be aware of that as well. But I might try and see and get my brother's feedback once he's come back for the group.
I mean, the other thing is when you get off at the airport, just go before you leave, just get a local SIM. You have to have a local SIM anyway in order to do anything around there. So just get a local SIM, put on some data, and then you're good to go to get updates and to sort of check in with things.
And I think what question from Karen?
Not a question, really just a comment. Dr. Naveed, this was absolutely very interesting presentation. I joined today as I am the EDI lead for London, so I wanted to learn more. I knew a bit about Hajj, etc. But what I wanted to ask, do you know I know you said you go out to the mosque, which is fantastic. And in my previous role, we worked with a lot of local mosques in London. Do you know if it is just unique to you? If other consultants or professionals are going out to the mosque to raise an awareness and the prevention, etc.?
I'm sure there are plenty of others. Most mosques, most big mosques, will put on a session like this around about now for would-be pilgrims, and a lot of it is on the is on the sort of legal and spiritual aspects of the Hajj, and we sort of try and just get in a 10-20 minute slot around the health aspects. But also you know, I mean, I've done things on Sky TV, on community channels and radio as well, so whatever medium you can just to get the information out, you know, people use. So I'm pretty confident that in every major city there'll be these things in the big mosques. But I don't know if there's a UKHSA network which is doing it. I'm sorry.
Thanks. Yeah.
I mean, certainly, I think it's something we can take away and put together what we've got here and build upon that. And one of the things I was thinking about, and sort of over time now, but is whether the vaccine hesitancy we've seen post-COVID, how that's going to impact on vaccine uptake for Hajj. That was just a sort of side thought in my brain. I know some people have to drop off soon, so just to let you know, I've put a little quiz about the Hajj. Let's see how well you listen to you, Naveed, in this talk into the chat. So do have a go with that as well.
Apologies for overrunning.
No, you've not overrun. We're dot. You finished dot on time.
Right. Any other questions or queries? As I say, I'm happy to share the share the slides. That's not a problem.
Yeah, there's some nice helpful links that are going into the chat as well. And just also to say, one other sort of thing I wanted to highlight, if anybody is interested in contributing towards South Asian Heritage Month, to reach out to Dr. Samia Latif, who's putting together some comms around that. Just lovely feedback coming into the chat now, Naveed, to just have a look at that.
Thanks.
So if there are no other questions, then I will call the session to a close.